Whenever we integrate data, one of the first things we'll discover is we have multiple copies of very similar entities in our data hub. We have duplicate data. This makes sense. We're pulling together information from multiple sources to create a unified view, and our integration starts off with multiple copies of the same information. What we need is a way to define a set of rules that can be applied to merge and deduplicate similar entities, so we end up with only one entity in the hub where only one entity should exist. We'll likely want this entity to be composed of pieces of data from all its similar copies for us so we can have an accurate and complete view of our integrated data. The MarkLogic Data Hub's built-in smart mastering provides this capability for us. Let's take a look. So recall, we uploaded a file of providers. Essentially providers, we defined a model, are medical providers. They're persons, they're people like doctors and nurses, and they practice at facilities, which can be hospitals or private practices. On the Integrate tab, we then created mapping steps. In these mapping steps, we mapped that source data, the raw source data, to the model we defined in Connect. And we ran these mapping steps to harmonize that data so we could then explore it. Now, we found, we're going to search on UPMC because I'm in Pittsburgh, that when we looked at our data, we could see the person data, and the person practices at a practice, and here it's UPMC, and we have distinct doctors practicing at 3 different UPMCs. But when we looked at UPMC, we see that the data for all 3 of these entities is the same. We have duplicate data. Well, we have a solution for that. And so we're going to go back to the Integrate tab, and we're going to add a match step and a merge step. And so we're going to call this match facilities. Step type is a matching step. The entity type is facility. Our data source. Now, our data source here is our collections. And so we're going to be looking at the facility data source. And now we see we have match options and we have match thresholds. And so in our match options, this is where we can define things like the match type. Now there's all sorts of different types available. We're exposing 3 here, but we'll just go for exact match. And we can define, hey, what property we want to match on. So often when you're integrating data, there's no master customer identifier, there's no master product identifier, there's no master location identifier. Usually a subject matter expert in the organization knows, though, if certain attributes have the same values across entities, then it's a 99% chance it's the same entity. And we're in a simple deduplicating exercise here. So essentially what we're going to say is we're going to do an exact match, and we'll just do it on the site name. You define a weight. So it's the property we want to match on, and then we give it a weight. This is an arbitrary number we come up with. We'll say 10. We're going to save this. But we say site name is not enough. We want the site name. We'll do another exact match. But this time we're going to do it on postal code. So if the postal code, we'll give this a weight of 5. These are arbitrary numbers that we come up with. So we have a site name and postal code, and we're saying, hey, if these things are exact matches across entities, then it's a potential match. It's a similar entity. So we can do this for all the properties for our entities that we want to match on. And of course, you saw there were different, besides exact, there are different capabilities there for fuzzy matching. It can get complex really quickly. But in this application, we keep it simple. But next, we define a match threshold. In the match threshold, we're going to call this a potential match. And here we just define a threshold. And the threshold has, if the number that gets hit is equal or greater than this amount, then take some action. And for us, we're going to flag this action as a notify. So merge would automatically merge the entities for us, but often we want to curate. We want to be notified, hey, what do we think are things that are matches based on the rules we applied? And then let us curate that and make that determination whether we want to merge after we review them. And so we're going to take that action here to do notify. And so we save. And so we have our match options, and we have our match thresholds. The next step we want to add is our merging step. We'll call this one merge facilities. Now, we know we're just dealing with similar data here. Again, it's going to be facilities, and our data source is facilities. What this allows us to do is essentially if we had data that was coming in and we had different links, maybe we're merging emails, but we're going to have different emails of the entities, or we have different values. Here we can define merge strategies and do more additional cleanup. You can do things like, hey, I want to capture both pieces of information and put it in an array for an entity, or I only want to take the latest based on a date, right? So here's where you can get really complex and do a lot of more cleanup on the data that you're integrating with the merge. But we're just going to use the default merge options because in a duplicate data scenario, if the data is similar across entities, you'll just end up with the distinct values in the merged entity. It's really simple. And so we're going to run these steps. We're going to run our match facilities and our merge facilities. We run these. And now we're going to go back to Explore. So in the upper right, we now have a notification now. And so now what we can do is we can go to our notification workbench. And so we'll hit this. We have 4 notifications. Well, what are these? Well, here's our inbox. Essentially, when the mastering steps are applied in the MarkLogic Data Hub and you do a notify action, here's where you can go review those potential matches and make the determination whether you do want to merge or not. And what we're looking at here are labels. The labels happen to be similar across these because it's duplicate data. And essentially the label we've applied, it's coming from the Explore tab that we defined on Connect. We wanted to look at the name of the entity in the graph, and so that's what's being used here. So you could change this to be a different label if you want. But we see we have 6 matches, 3 matches. This tells us how many potential matches we have. And so we can go look at this. And now what we can do is we can go review. If any lines were different, we'd see a red line, we'd see the deltas, but we see all the different copies of the document. These are all distinct that are composed. Essentially, if we, that are in the system, all the duplicates in the system, and we have a merged preview. And so someone can review this and say, yep, these are all the same entity. I want to merge this, so let's merge this. When we merge this, we now see we have a URI for this document. And so we've merged, what have we merged? We've merged Family Health Center, right? But let's go to the next one. Let's go take a look at, where's UPMC? Because that's the one we were looking at. Here's UPMC. We look at this, it's all the same data. Let's merge this one, right? And so now when we go back to Explore and we look at UPMC, we see we only have one UPMC in the system now. And it's just as simple as that, right? So we'll look at how we can unmerge and explore and show you other information. But now when people search on UPMC, right, and they see the single entity, you can always go back to the merge history. And essentially what you see from left to right are what are the documents that compose the document that I'm now looking at. So you always know what was used to create the thing you're looking at in the Data Hub. And of course now, we didn't merge everything, right? We did that for Family Health Center, and we can see a little indicator here that these are merged. But we didn't do it for Memorial Hospital. Now, for some of these, right, you might decide that, hey, I don't want to merge this. And so the other option you see here is block this match. So in some situations where you end up with very similar looking data, but then, essentially maybe there's not enough here information to make that determination, or some subject matter expert knows that like, yeah, this looks similar, but we actually know there's a couple of distinct entities. We need to handle this special. You can then block this match. So when you block a match, what this does is this sets a flag in the system. If anyone tries to apply that mapping and merging step again, or tries to merge these entities, it won't be allowed. Essentially, it's blocked from merging until someone unblocks this. So whenever we go look at Memorial Hospital, right, we're going to see these as distinct entities until we merge them. Whoops. And it's that simple. And that is your whirlwind tour of mastering. And so if you have to disambiguate or deduplicate entities, you create a match step. Essentially, you can define properties to match on in that match step, define weights on those properties, depending on how important it is to match on those properties to determine whether or not you have a potential duplicate on your hands. You can define a threshold and an action. The threshold, essentially, is if the weights that you've defined are greater than equal to the threshold, then we want to take an action. And the action can be configured to be either merge those entities by default or notify you that you have a potential match so that you can then go curate those yourself. Along with that, with your match step, you can create a merge step. In the merge step, we can add additional options for data cleanup, essentially, on how we want to handle the disambiguation, the merging of similar data into that distinct entity for us. And then finally, validate and update and explore. There's a notification inbox for curation of potential matches that you saw. And there you can determine whether you want to merge those entities or block any merges in the future. And that's it. We've integrated our data. We've mastered our data. Now let's go explore.